It's really about having a think about what our SOC teams are effectively going to do next. So lots of information feeds, lots of threat intel, and it can be information overload a lot of the time. As a company, we exist to make the internet a safer place, and that sounds a little bit cheesy, but it's actually true on the third bullet. But firstly, we are disrupting cybercrime by protecting enterprises from cyber attacks. Could be ransomware, in various different ways. We're also protecting organizations help their consumers from bottom line theft, from fraud, that kind of stuff. We've got many companies that have got a massive problem with fraud, cardholder not present type scenarios, where criminals are breaking in. They're not breaking in, sorry, they're logging in to other people's accounts and perhaps stealing loyalty points, that kind of thing. And in terms of making the internet a safer place, we do that. We genuinely do that with the data that we have, the power of the data. We're enabling law enforcement to have some pretty amazing results when it comes to bringing down organized crime groups, that kind of thing. So a bit about me. I've been in the industry a long time, back to the mainframe days, security mainframe. We didn't have the same problems that we have now. Distributed computing is giving us all sorts of challenges that we didn't have when we had a mainframe and a couple of thousand dumb terminals. Spent a lot of time with various vendors. You'll see the one furthest back is Computer Associates. Don't think they exist anymore, but that's where my kind of mainframe background came from. And I get a real kick out of being able to talk to CISOs and challenge them on their current way of thinking, because the traditional methods that people are applying to these problems aren't working. And there's lots of examples out there. We, every year, conduct, in line with the analysts, Gartner, Forrester, and a few others, a report. It's the Identity Exposure Report. We've just launched it, in actual fact. I invite you all to go to our website and download it. It's very interesting. But looking at the real key point here is the ability to avoid, if possible, ransomware attacks. The data we collected last year alone was staggering from thousands of different sources. But the number on the right really is going up year on year. Almost 50% of the information we're collecting is coming from botnet logs. When I say botnet logs, I'm talking about your traditional information stealers. And only in the last few weeks, I've seen many, many more that I hadn't seen before. So the ones like Russian password stealer, Vidar stealer, Mars stealer, some of you have probably come across some of them before. But there were 5 or 6 new ones in the last couple of weeks. So we're seeing this constantly as we collect our data and make it available to our customers. But ransomware is here to stay, as John said earlier. And it's interesting when you look at the report that budgets last year went up significantly, because when we interviewed non-IT board members of FTSE 100 companies, the biggest concern they had was being hit by ransomware. And so, as a result, budgets went up for CISOs, for people that are spending money on trying to prevent these type of attacks. And also, very interestingly, it's the larger organizations that are the targets. These criminals are clever people. These criminals are out to get the big tickets. So they're not going to target a 500-people organization that turns over a couple of £1 million a year. They're going after the big boys. So people with more than 24,000, 25,000 employees that typically have bigger budgets to address these type of risks, but not always the case. There are market challenges around ransomware and why it's not going to go away quickly. The sort of stuff we see all the time is unmanaged devices. We live in a post-COVID world. I thought I could get through the presentation without mentioning COVID, but it's probably quite important. We live in a post-COVID world, hopefully, that has changed the way in which organizations are running, the way they're running their business. We seem to have COVID behind us now, but I don't see much change in terms of what businesses are doing, trying to get everybody back to the office. Certain verticals have to have people in the office, but it's quite unusual now for a banking employee or logistics employee to be in their office 5 days a week. It's typically a hybrid model now of working from home, but also working from the office. And in fact, a large Scottish-based bank, no prizes for guessing who they may be, I've got a current project to lose 50% of their real estate over the next 5 years, based on this new model of people working from home. But working from home does bring additional risks, shared devices, that kind of thing, unmanaged devices, unmanaged applications. So it's not just about the devices, it's about the applications that those devices are accessing, whether it be cloud delivery or other elements of delivery as well. And under-managed devices is quite important. I think the second speaker today mentioned this, that there's lots and lots of EDR systems out there, lots and lots of antivirus vendors, all very, very good, but none of them are a silver bullet. And we've seen lots of instances where malware has managed to bypass these controls. So it's a great, everybody has to have EDR and antivirus, but it isn't a silver bullet. And that's why we call these under-managed devices, that they're not catching those problems. And incomplete processes. And I'll go into this a little bit more in a bit. And it's basically, you know, back to the information overload. We're giving our customers lots and lots of information, but what do they do next? What's their process? And we often refer to this as post-infection remediation, and I'm going to cover that. But these actors, these threat actors, they're no longer in a cellar with hoodies on, your typical, stereotypical vision of what you think they look like. They're professional businesses. You can buy your malware kit now from one of these businesses on the dark web or wherever, and if you've got a problem with that, you can phone their help desk, and they'll help you. They'll help you make your malware campaign successful. They're driven by sales. They offer training courses. You know, if you were to take the words malware and criminal out of it, you'd be very respectful of them as a successful business. And this is what we're up against. The effects of malware are long-lasting. It's not just a question of cleaning the device and moving on. We find, certainly in our world, the world we live and work in within Spycloud, that it's not just user credentials that are being stolen. We're seeing lots of information, around about 200 different types of data that we gather and we make available to our customers to try and solve these problems. So yes, it's usernames, email addresses, that kind of thing, but it's also IP addresses. It's operating systems on machines, the type of browser they're using, API tokens, crypto wallets, home address, postcode, national insurance number, you name it. There's lots and lots of information there that can produce lots and lots of different use cases for different criminal groups. Obviously, ransomware attack is at the top. That's one of the things that we're really focused on helping organizations trying to avoid. Cloud takeover, network profiling, that sort of thing. Interestingly, the other key element that is stolen as part of a malware campaign with most of the information stealers that I mentioned earlier, and some of the new ones, would be the cookie sessions or session IDs that are being used with websites. Now, I know that there's someone here today from HMRC, and I'm not targeting them specifically. I do love the HMRC, by the way. Don't we all? Well, we all pay for them, don't we? So but if you go to the HMRC website, the last time I did it was about a year ago, and there's a little button that says, remember me for 90 days, okay? Which is great and convenient, but can be also very dangerous as well. The US tax system is quite different, but they also have a similar type functionality that you can be remembered for 90 days. But in the US, it's very, very simple to apply for a tax credit. And that was where they were losing a lot of money. Criminals were logging in, assuming the identity of someone else, and being able to apply for a tax credit. So the cookie session, or the session ID and the cookies, are also being stolen and harvested by these criminals. And it's the most common way of overcoming multi-factor authentication. Again, like AV, MFA is a great defense, but no silver bullet. I don't think there is such a thing as a silver bullet. We certainly don't have one, but it's the amalgamation of all these type of technologies that can get you as close as possible to that silver bullet. Key blind spots that we talk about would be browser sync functionalities. So if you have two devices, one in the office, one at home, you know, it's common now that you can sync these browsers so that you can have the same experiences when you're in the office or at home. But that presents risk, because on your home machine, you won't have the same kind of EDR or AV capability that will be on your corporate device. So you're all of a sudden opening up risk. Unmanaged devices, back to the bring your own device challenge that we all have right now. I spoke to a couple of CISOs earlier on today, and we asked the question about BYOD, and they kind of see it as a necessary evil, something they've got to do, but something they don't like doing. And I see a few people nodding when I say that. Third-party vendors and contractors is still a massive area that provides risk for organizations. Carphone Warehouse were victim to this a few years ago. You may remember that they actually got to their day zero, and their day zero was a contractor that had access to their systems, created the problem for them and their data breach. And an incomplete SOC process, what do I mean by that? Kind of touched on it a little bit already, but really it's about the informational overload of all the logs, of all the data that we're sending to our organization, our customer organizations. And then what they're typically doing is wiping the device, they're changing the password, and then moving on. But it's more than that. You've got to consider the applications, the cloud applications that these devices were accessing, from day zero and beyond. Shadow IT. No one in this room's got any shadow IT, right? Kind of reaction I expected. So we talk about post-infection remediation. And the best way of describing post-infection remediation, if I was to explain it to my children, would be we're very, very good at being a fire alarm. We can tell you where the fire is and how the fire started, okay? But that's not much good unless you can actually extinguish the fire. So taking that a stage further and being able to extinguish that fire is what we call post-infection remediation. Not necessarily automating the remediation of that, but giving the SOC analyst or giving the CISO's team a plan and a visible plan of what they need to look at post-infection. So that's down to things like being able to understand the applications that that infected device has had access to over the past 90, 180, 360 days. It really extends the SOC's reach by understanding the criticality of who's had access to what. And we're not that bothered, we're told by our customers that they're not that concerned by things like Facebook or LinkedIn. But they certainly are concerned when we talk to them and show them, give them evidence that their cloud applications like Salesforce, Oracle, Okta, Microsoft Online, O365 have had instances of people logging in with home devices or under-managed devices that have malware on them. So who else has got that information? Where is it? It's obviously been leaked somewhere because the machine's been infected. Most organizations we speak to are very good at the first four boxes, okay? Isolate, we've got a problem, the fire alarm's gone off. Isolate the device, identify the details, create a new image, remove the malware from the machine. But the post-infection remediation part really is about resetting all the credentials, invalidate any sessions, get rid of these cookies and session IDs that might exist on that application, and review your policy. But review the application integrity as well. So coming at this from a application-centric view. Yeah, the traditional way of doing it is looking at it from a machine-centric view to see what damage that machine has done or could potentially do. But it's also from a business-centric point of view, looking at it from my Okta. So I'm looking at my Okta instance. Please tell me all the risks associated to that instance with Okta. Am I getting a card? What color? Red. First one today, John. Key takeaways, second last slide. Attack surface is expanding massively, so truly try and understand that. SOCs need a paradigm shift. They need to be able to move to understanding, fixing the entire problem. I'm not going to get bored saying it, you might get bored hearing it, but post-infection remediation really is what we're talking about. And stop the further attacks. I welcome you to go to our website, top right. We won't spam you. We do need your email address, but put your email address in, and we'll return the real data that we hold from over 370 billion assets. So you'll get two graphs, one on the left showing your company's risk, one on the right showing your personal risk. And lastly, all this information came from the credential leak report, the survey that we did. And it's really interesting to see how world events can influence the passwords that people use. No surprise, last year, Queen Elizabeth was a very, very, very popular password. God rest her soul. Ukraine, you can read for yourself. Yellowstone's in there in small. Yellowstone's really good if you haven't seen it, by the way. It's really, really good. Who knows, maybe next year we'll have Kevin Fielder and Louis Theroux as popular passwords.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.